I'm JP Tuesday.
And I'm Kiki Cannon. As lifelong Disney fans, the work of countless talented Disney creatives have shaped our lives.
Now, as the Disney catalog expands, we're taking a journey through film and television to discover if that spark that shaped us as children lives on in adulthood.
Does your favorite Disney media still cast that same spell? Join us as we find out. We are Rewatching the Magic.
Hi, Kiki.
Hi, Tuesday.
This episode will be going out the day before Election Day here in the United States. So we decided we were going to do an election-themed episode, what to do. And we came up with Idiocracy, the 2006 Mike Judge movie. There's a phrase that's come up over the last, dare I say, 10 years, is that Idiocracy was supposed to be satire, not a documentary.
I thought the phrase was, dear God, make it stop.
That too. But, yeah, especially, we are recording this episode about 24 hours after a certain comic said certain words about the Puerto Rican people. And as a Puerto Rican myself, I'm kind of hot about it. I will not say his name. He does not deserve it. And for the past, 6-7 years, there's been discourse online of, Puerto Rico should care about their own country, not us. It's like, Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory, which makes me like, ugh. So watching this movie again for the first time in 15 or so years, it's like, oh God, these people are today. These are the people of today. These people vote. Ugh. So watching this movie again after all of that, frustrating, very frustrating.
Yeah. It's very interesting to see what it got right, what it got wrong, and how much I want to put Mike Judge as the star of Ow My Balls for some of the things in this.
And this was supposed to be 500 years into the future, and it's barely been 20 since this movie came out.
Yeah, 2006. We will put the disclaimer on. We put it at the end of last week's. This is an R-rated movie. This will be an R-rated discussion. It kind of has to be considering some of the things in the film. If you watch with the littles, come back next week because we will definitely have a family-friendly movie next week. So this week, not really the ones for the littles. There's probably going to be some salty language. This will unavoidably be a very political discussion, and politics right now is not very kind and full of naughty, naughty words. Also, just another programming note, I am very, very sick right now, so if my voice is not as strong as it usually is, that is why. Please forgive me. We are doing the best we can with what we got.
So, Mike Judge had the concept of this movie going back into the late 90s, about 10 years before this movie came out. And even then, this is 1996. And there was already growing anti-intellectualism discussions, eugenics, overpopulation, the conversation of childless adults. Again, this even in 1996. And those conversations have not changed since 1996. We're still having those conversations.
I'm gonna tell you, as someone who has, let's just put it out there. I mean, between you and I, there's a difference in like educational level and background and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But just because of the stuff that I've been forced to read for, classes I've been in, this debate goes back longer than 1990s. Like, this is a debate that's gone back, like, 3,000-4,000 years. Oh no, all of the smart people are not having enough children. All of the poor people are breeding like rats. There are too many immigrants coming into our wonderful country of insert literally any country here. Did they have writing? They were writing about it. It's really sad that humanity has not changed that much. And I have this debate with people all of the time. I had this debate with my own teachers. They would be like, "Oh, I bemoan how much we have fallen in this state of intellectualism today. It's all just," and I was going through like my bachelor's degree right as YouTube was really getting its start. Okay? And my university professors were going like, "Oh, the only thing my students want to do is watch the YouTubes now, and the only thing on the YouTubes is guys hitting themselves in the nuts." Because at that point it was like, you could put like 3-minute videos on YouTube, and that's mostly what it was. I mean, if you remember early YouTube in like 2005, 2007, that kind of area, when Idiocracy came out, it was like screamer vids, which was, if you're too young to remember that, it would just be like a soothing car commercial, and then like a scary face would come up and go like, "Nah," and you'd like email that to somebody, and it was kind of like an early version of a Rickroll. Also, this is when the Rickroll started, and people thought that was the height of humor. Like, haha, I got you to click on a Rick Astley music video. Which Rick Astley rules, so whatever. But I told people, I was like, people are not dumber now than they were, 400, 500 years ago. It's just that now we have cameras that can record people doing whatever they're doing.
There was a phrase that the reason people weren't smart is that they didn't have access to knowledge. Now everyone in the world carries around a computer in their pocket that has access to all of the world's information. Hasn't really made us any smarter.
Yeah, I couldn't get my students to like just Google what a word meant.
Yeah.
And I would ask them in class. Now remember, I was teaching college students. These were not like 6-year-olds, I was teaching, well, sometimes I was teaching high school students that were in early placement, but for the most part I was teaching adults. And the number of times I had to say, everybody in this room has a cell phone in their pocket, right? And almost everybody did. I mean, I teach in a poor and rural area, but for the most part, everybody had at least some form of cheap smartphone. And I would be like, okay, you have Google in your phone. If you didn't understand that word, it takes you 5 seconds to type that into Google and figure out what it means, or to hit the little microphone, repeat the word I just said, and figure out what it means. And I'm like, do that now. Maybe not with the little microphone, because you're in the middle of class and don't talk in class, but like, we're in college. I'm not going to yell at you if you're just using your phone to figure out what a word means. Like, that's what it's for.
And we're seeing it, I mean, even on social media and stuff. It's like people will say, they'll ask a question, what does this mean? And there's at least going to be one thing that a 5-second Google search would have answered your question. But you didn't want to Google it. You wanted to ask people on social media what is it. Or, Kiki, as a teacher yourself, you've already encountered it. People will just use ChatGPT to create something with it. Like, okay, I don't know what this means. ChatGPT, make a report with using this word and define it and all that stuff, rather than them looking up themselves.
And the thing is I'm going to tell you, ChatGPT probably doesn't know, because that's not what it's for. Don't use ChatGPT to do your papers, because it's plagiarism. I mean, it's cheating. But also too, ChatGPT is dumb. ChatGPT is at least as dumb as you are. So don't do that. But the thing is like, we have Mike Judge on this movie, who Mike Judge is the creator of Beavis and Butthead, who, I mean, I don't know about your parents, but like, all of the adults in my life were like, that Beavis and Butthead, they sure are gonna turn our kids stupid,
You know what? It's mentioned in the movie, and we're going to talk. This is going to be a very politically motivated episode, so I'll just straight up say it. What our parents were afraid MTV and stuff like Beavis and Butthead was going to do to us, it already happened to them due to Fox News.
Yeah, I mean, the Fox News effect on the generation before us is really horrific. One of the interesting things about this movie is that it is so heavy on product placement, and I am very shocked that Mike Judge was able to get all these products.
Yeah, I mean, you get Pepsi, you get Costco, you get Carl's Jr. I guess because they're not making fun of the products. I mean, the main quote product of the movie doesn't exist. Is Brawndo. It was made up.
Yeah, the one that they say that the stock tanks is Brawndo. Yeah. So
now, granted, Brawndo, like everything else, it eventually did exist as a licensing thing, but did not exist when this movie came out.
Yeah, they made up that one for the movie. But the thing is that their idea is that eventually everything is bought and sold, including the U.S. government. I mean, Brawndo owns the FDA, the FCC. The U.S. flag is, you can't really tell it until you look up close, but like, the red stripes on the U.S. flag are just words, and they're the names of companies that are sponsoring the U.S. government.
What's that phrase? The U.S. is just 10 corporations in a trench coat?
Yeah. And in this case, it's literally true.
I mean, the White House and Congress have advertisements all over them.
Everyone's clothing have advertisements all over them. You cannot find non-branded clothing. Every single outfit has just company logos on it. But I want to talk about the main conceit of the movie, because I think that's the most important thing, and it's the thing I have the most problem with. That the entire first chunk of the movie is just, what if instead of the future being a utopian society, it was a dystopian society, because what if instead of eugenics we accidentally did dysgenics, which is the opposite, of course. And his idea is that instead of the middle class and upper class people breeding, it was the idiot lower class people breeding like rabbits, and none of the, educated elites had children.
Yeah, I mean we see the two couples right at the beginning of the movie. The intellectual couple who is, well, we're going to plan on this. We don't want to bring a child into this economy. It's not a right time for us. And then you flip over to the poor family, the low intellectual family, as they describe them in the movie.
The low IQ, because they're going off of IQ in this movie.
Yeah, low IQ family, or low IQ man getting multiple women pregnant, and his kids getting multiple women pregnant, and just the quote low IQ people constantly repopulating, and just a world full of stupid people. As this movie's words, not mine.
Yeah.
I want to reiterate that. This movie's words, not mine.
And this is the movie's first problem, and one of the things where the movie weirdly predicted something about the future, but it predicted it backwards. Because if you look today, who are the people who are suddenly obsessed with having just oodles of children? It is people like, very specifically, Elon Musk.
Oh yeah. I mean, I did not want to mention his name on the podcast, but we'll go with it.
Well, yeah, no,
yeah,
I mean,
he's obsessed. He wants to spread his seed. I'm guessing he saw this movie 20 years ago and was like, I'm the world's smartest man. I should have multiple children so smart people can continue to exist.
But it's not just him. He is part of a group, and his father was one of these people, which is why we got him. Thanks for that, emerald mine owning daddy. That they believe that they should be populating the world with their superior genetic material. And they are always particularly wealthy, and they are always particularly white. And there is a documentary right now you can go on Netflix and watch called The Man with 1,000 Children. And the problem is that, specifically for men, because, anybody with a uterus, it kind of tends to have a built-in expiration date on this. But some places have not gotten their laws too much in order on sperm bank donations.
Yeah.
And there is one man who, I want to say he was from Iceland. And Iceland has such a small gene pool to begin with, because there weren't that many people originally who went over and founded it. And there aren't that many people who live there today, that in Iceland, when you kind of get to the age where you want to have children, you actually really have to research your genetics to make sure that you're not going to end up with somebody that's too closely related to you.
I mean, we're seeing that, and it's kind of happening now in the United States. There's a few people I follow a few people on social media, Instagram, TikTok, who, they're donor conceived children, and they're finding out that they have multiple siblings, as the donor fathers have donated their sperm to multiple banks without check.
Yeah, and but that's just if you're regularly conceived in Iceland. And this guy, because of that, they have very strict rules on donation in Iceland, and they generally only take from people, elsewhere. So he decided to go to, he started in other Nordic countries, and then he started going around Europe, and then he started going to Asian countries, and then he started going to African countries, and then he started going to America, and then he started going to, and so far they've tracked, 1,000 live births or more to this one man around the world, and they're not sure how many more there might be, because some of the clinics and he would also do direct donation. Ahem. Ahem. I mean, it's an R-rated episode, but, where he would just meet up with a woman and have sex with her in order to conceive a child. Because to him, that would have better chances of conception. It doesn't, by the way. He was just using it to, have fun. But that was a service he provided. And the thing is that he was lying to everyone he donated to and saying, oh, I've only had 3 live births before, so you'd be the 4th. And it wasn't until they started putting together the documentary that they discovered that he might have more than that. And it wasn't until well into putting together the documentary that they realized that it could be in the hundreds. And then they discovered there might be thousands. And so just this one man flying around the world and donating to various sperm banks might have tipped the genetic shape of the world. The old joke about everyone's related to Genghis Khan because he killed so many people and fathered so many babies that he single-handedly genetically reshaped the world. It's probably not true, but in a world where we're not keeping good track of things like this, it's suddenly possible for one guy to possibly accidentally upset the genetic balance of the world like that. So, and I know several people personally who have had donor conceived babies for various reasons. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that the practice is wrong. I'm saying that better records need to be kept, and people need to be told if they are donor conceived, so
that's another thing, is that parents just do not want to tell their children that they're donor conceived, as if that would make those children any less theirs, which is ill-advised.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just one of those things. It's I think that's the thing that's more the problem, is that one or two, and I hate to say it because it's just the way things come about, is that a person giving sperm is more possible to upset a balance than anyone. Egg donation is not as much a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's more an issue, is that you usually find a man that goes like, oh, I have superior genes, and therefore I must have a gajillion babies. You know? Usually because of the birth process and the gestation process and stuff, those kind of ideas don't happen to women as much. And also, egg donation isn't as much of a thing, and also there are a limited number of eggs anyway, you know? Eggs are not a constantly replenishing source. So it's just kind of how it tends to work out. But it's funny how this movie assumes that, one, IQ is any sort of measure of intelligence, which it is not. There are massive amounts of problems with IQ as a baseline. Go look those up. They're fun in all the ways that are not. That IQ is genetic. It is not. That it is the lower classes that would breed on a whim instead of the upper classes, monetarily speaking, which we are finding out it's not these days. You're finding that, it's very expensive to have babies. A lot of the people in the lower classes in the capitalist system, if they have access to birth control, even just, condoms and stuff, are saying, hey, you know what we wouldn't like to have now? Another mouth to feed.
And, that's, we've talked about this on the podcast before, but yeah, there's, political parties are like, yeah, don't, we don't want you to be responsible with procreation. We want you to have as many children as possible. We're going to take away abortion rights. We're looking to get rid of sex education, and we're looking to get rid of contraception in general. Just have more babies because we need more workers. We need more people in the military, our for-profit prison system, etc., etc. Told you it's going to be a politically charged episode, folks.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way to talk about the ideas in this movie without getting into it, but that is the thing, is that this movie makes it look like a choice that, like, low IQ leads to, when the guy at the beginning says, oh, I thought you were on the pill, and he says no, and she says, hell no, and he says, oh, that must be Brittany that was taking the pill then, and that's how she finds out that he's sleeping with the neighbor too,
And I mean, they put some jokes in there, like, of the possible mothers of children that this guy has. Multiple women, yes, but a couple of also animals. There's like a dog and a goat.
That is one of the things, is if you freeze frame the giant family tree of the, idiot that ends up becoming the kind of great grandfather of the population that we see in the later part of the movie, there are some funny, depending on your idea of funny, Easter eggs.
Including a couple of characters from a TV show that was airing at the time, created by Mike Judge. No, not Beavis and Butthead, King of the Hill.
King of the Hill, which is coming back soon.
Yeah. We just got that leak. They thanks to Gray Griffin, who's going to be part of the show, shared a picture of adult Bobby Hill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's gonna be interesting. He's gonna be a chef in his adult form. Yeah, I think it does. The fact that Bobby would have become a chef, an Asian fusion chef.
I mean, of course. Come on, if you guys know, I'm not going to say it here on the show. If you know King of the Hill, I mean, of course he would do it for Connie.
Yeah, but we don't actually know where Connie is in his life right now. That's one of the big unanswered questions. I want to know. But both Hank Hill and Bobby Hill are in the family tree. In their animated forms, they didn't get human actors to stand in for them, so
or
I
worse,
find that funny.
AI imaging wasn't really a thing in '96.
Yeah, but you could have just cast actors and given them the names Hank and Bobby as Easter eggs.
Yeah.
And then there's, like you said, there's a goat, there's a sheep, I think, and
a couple
there's
of celebrities.
A gorilla, and then there's not just a couple of celebrities, it's specifically who the celebrities are. It's George Bush, Condoleezza Rice, and Donald Rumsfeld, I think, are the three. And
Those are going to be politically charged episode, folks.
Yeah, and they would have been in office at the time because this is before the election of Barack Obama. Mike Judge showing his, what he thought at the time. Yeah, the idea that the perfectly average IQ and everything else guy from 2005, when they have the beginning of the movie set, would wake up in 2505 due to a botched military experiment and be the smartest person in the world. It sounds funny.
I mean, 1996, just a few years later, Futurama would start, and that's kind of the plot there too, of an average Joe from the modern era getting hibernated for 1,000 years into the future, and at least that was it. The whole smartest man thing was a different episode, but you get what I'm going with that. So yeah, we have Joe, our average Joe. I get it. Luke Wilson here he's a military librarian. He's chosen because he is the most average man in the military to undergo this hibernation experiment. And since they wanted a one man, one woman, they were trying to find a woman in the military to be the other test subject. They could not find one that fit their qualifications. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Is it that women in the military are too smart? Or it could just be that the general in charge of the experiment is a wannabe pimp who's addicted to prostitutes.
Honestly, I think that it's more of a statement on... Now, I'm just gonna say this as a woman, and you can get mad at me if you want, but the old thing about Ginger Rogers did every step that
backwards and in heels.
Yeah, the backwards and in heels. Yeah, to be seen as good as a man, you have to do everything a man can do better, and just a little more than. So any woman that would be able to get into the military has to be able to do the same things as a man and just a little better. You know, so like you couldn't be just an average woman and get into the military. You have to be like an above average woman to get into the military. Like a dude just has to be breathing, basically, is kind of what they're saying. Like, oh, are you a perfectly average man? He's like a librarian in the army, which to me should be a trained and skilled job. And even in 2005, they just have him like sitting in a back room watching TV, which kind of makes me go like, well, that's why it takes forever to get a FOIA request back. Like,
Yeah.
if the army librarian is just sitting in a back room watching TV, I wonder if that was also a commentary. But, I think that it's like the world's most average woman, the only job she'd be able to get would be a hooker. Because, like, to get any other job, you'd have to be so much better at, like, like, you'd be like, oh, all you have to do is lay there and have sex. Like, a guy would be like, well, literally any breathing, orifice would be okay at that job. And it's like, but it takes so much talent and money and, like, business relations and stuff that, like, you have to literally be just the average woman
But
to
again,
do that job.
I'll stress that they make a point that in this movie, the military officer in charge of this hibernation project is obsessed with being a pimp. And
Well,
that's
he
where it goes
he
wrong.
is, and it might be that. I also will point out in the same thing that, like, I had forgotten because it's been a long time since I've seen this movie. There are so many slurs in this movie I had forgotten about.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, once you
Ableism,
get to 2505, it's just nothing but slurs.
it, I
Because
mean,
it's supposed to be like, oh, look at how all the stupid people talk. Their entire new language, quote unquote, is nothing but slurs, you know?
and
And all,
grunts.
but there is one thing they don't say in 2505, but they do say in 2005.
The N word.
The N word. There is one time they say the N word. No, it's with an A and not with a hard R, but, and it's said between two white guys, and it's said by the military man that wants to be the pimp. He's a white guy, and he says it to another white guy as he's going in, and he's like, sup, and then that's the only time it's ever said. And Maya Rudolph's in the room, and Maya Rudolph is mixed race.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't say it to her. He says it to the white guy who is running the experiment.
Yeah.
When they get to 2005, there are black people around. The president is a black guy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, no one ever calls President Camacho the N-word. Even in, just passing, even in like, hey, like you never see like, I do not believe, because I was listening for it, I do not remember hearing it. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember hearing anybody?
No, not in the future, no. So say what you will about the use of uh homosexual slurs. I guess that's the
Well, he uses homosexual slurs, he uses ableist slurs, like, there's a lot of other slurs that Mike Judge pulls out in this movie. He pulls that one out once as a throwaway joke between two white guys before that guy gets thrown in jail, because that's what derails the project at the beginning, and it's the reason they don't wake up for 500 years. So, like, everybody else is supposed to be like, oh, they're just idiots. They don't know what they're saying. But the one guy who uses the racial slur is the one that gets thrown in jail in 2005.
Yeah. Yeah. But, it does say a lot that the future does not have that slur. But, say what you will. So, yeah, we have Average Joe here in the future where language has become a combination of slurs, profanity, grunts, and laughing.
And also African American vernacular English.
Yeah.
Which at the time was more commonly called Ebonics, which is it was always a controversial phrase.
Yeah, but again, it that's another part of this movie that hasn't aged well. That vernacular, even today, it is seen as this is what less intelligent people sound like, and now we're in the future where everyone's an idiot and everyone talks like that.
But what's so funny is
they also throw in, according to the narrator, Southern slang.
Yeah, but that's what he means. He doesn't mean Southern slang. He means African American slang.
Ah.
That's what he means. Because I was listening there, and other than a couple of uses of y'all, that's the only Southern quote slang that gets used. Everything else that gets used is very specifically black slang. However, as a linguist, I can tell you that what this movie chalks up to as black slang and idiot black uneducated ebonics or whatever is incorrect. All of it. Because they want to say like escape instead of escape. And everything. And in that they're making fun of like axe instead of ask. Not realizing that ask and axe are both from the same root word. And they split off at the same time. And it's just they became popular with two different people, but they both come from the same root word, Askian, which used to also be pronounced and spelled Axian. So it's not incorrect, it's just a different dialect. Once you understand where these things come from, it's like, oh, you're not being a grammatical snob here, you're just being racist. You know? Or maybe you're trying to be a grammatical snob. I'll give Mike Judge the benefit of the doubt that he was just trying to be a grammatical snob, but he didn't know enough about linguistics to understand how racist he was being. Because I have enough respect for Mike Judge to say that. I don't think that was his intention. I think that like most kind of people who, there's a lot of white people, and I used to be one of them. I'm just going to go right out and say it. I used to be, in my younger years before I studied linguistics, I used to be the type of white person that was like, don't you mean ask? It's ASK, not AKS, you know. But now I'm the type of person that's like, oh, I understand the history and, whatever is that word, and I don't really give a shit anymore. um, because it's a dialect, and that's how dialects work. So when he's using things like escape in the movie, that's not how it would. That's not how we would see the language grow, because there's nothing for it to grow out of. We know enough about language migration to know that that's not, in 500 years we would not see escape.
Also, I mean, I mentioned homosexual slurs. It's, we're seeing it now again. It never went away, but it's coming more now in the last few years. Is people who just say things they don't like are gay, and it's been that way. I mean, people have used that vernacular for a while. People have kind of shunned upon that. It's kind of creeped back up in the last few years, thanks to the chuds. We talked about them last week, the incel chuds. Anything they don't like is gay, and gay is bad, and they don't say gay, they say the F slur. I will not say that on this podcast. But yeah, every time Joe tries to have a reasonable conversation or say something with any level of thought, they call him gay. They even do the little hand gesture implying it.
Yeah, the limp wrist. That's the thing at the end of the movie, where what did they call him, the executioner, Beef Supreme. Mm-hmm. That's what they call him, the rehabilitation officer, the executioner in the monster truck thing. Mm-hmm. Where Joe gives the wonderful impassioned plea for his life, and Beef Supreme is just standing there with the fire launcher, and Beef Supreme doesn't say a word. He just does the little limp wrist gesture, and the whole crowd starts laughing, and they're like, yeah, kill him with the fire flamethrower, and I was like, see, that's it. You don't even have to say that,
Yeah, I mean, and that's just where we're at today. And that's why I said this thing has become a documentary or a prophecy, in that you can have the most rational explanation of anything, or have any kind of anything you say with any actual thought, and someone will say, well, that's gay. Well, how do you combat that? How do you combat someone who will ignore anything you say and will just throw a slur at you?
Me personally, I have a meme that is Worf from Star Trek, and it just says, then die in ignorance, I have no further use for you. And I just drop that and leave the argument. It's like, all right, you wanna hang on to your ignorance, then that's fine. I will go along and stop trying to teach you.
So the movie Idiocracy, I mean, again, has, last 10 years, it's been kind of been brought up, and this whole thing about, the way the world's going, the way we've picked our political leaders. I mean, in the last longer than 10 years, I would say 15 years, since the Obama administration, basically, political parties have become seen as sports teams through certain demographics. It's like, it doesn't matter what they say as long as they have a D or an R next to their name. They're my guy. I'm going to vote for them. Doesn't matter what they say. Doesn't matter what their policies are. They're team red, they're team blue, they're my team, sports mentality and politics. The reason I wanted to do Idiocracy specifically is because we have the character of Camacho. He's the president of the United States. Terry Crews, he's awesome. And people were...
Excuse me. I think you mean President Dwayne Elizondo Mountain Dew Herbert Camacho, and you will put respect upon his name.
The reason I really wanted to do the Idiocracy was because people were comparing the recent Republican National Convention to this movie. Especially when freaking Hulk Hogan, the wrestler, comes out and does a pro wrestler promo for Donald Trump, and they were comparing him to Camacho. That is an insult to this character. That is an insult to the man Terry Crews. Because, as I've already stated, again, politically charged podcast people, we've seen what the Republican policy is. We know what they're planning. We know what they're doing. And yet we have the character of Camacho here who recruits Joe because he is now considered the smartest man in the world to help people. Because for all of his bravado, for all of his macho-ness, Camacho actually legitimately cares about people. He wants to help. He wants to find out why the plants aren't growing, what is wrong, how can I be a better representative of the people? Which is the complete opposite of what I'm seeing from the Republicans.
You know, there have been times that I have defended this movie, and in a way, I will still put those defenses forward still, is that there are a lot of things in the future of this movie that recommend it above a lot of the things we have now. I think a lot of the things that are wrong with this movie are wrong in Mike Judge's framing of the movie. Mm-hmm. But the thing is that they discover through this IQ test when Joe gets thrown in jail for not having a bank account, basically, and identification.
Identification tattoo.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother political that's a whole nother dystopian future message right there.
Well, honestly, there are some places where you can get thrown in jail for not having an ID. Mm. You know? There are places that you must have ID, and if you cannot show ID, or if you're not in the national system or the state system or whatever, then, you know, you're there illegally and you can be deported or whatever. But here they do it with a tattoo, which, you know, it's a statement on consumerism because they actually call it a UPC. You know, it's a product code. So everybody's got a barcode tattoo, and that's linked to your bank account. That's unlinked, you know, and people freak out if you're unscannable. You basically don't exist. But we also see that it's a surveillance system and everything else because there's scanners everywhere.
That's how he gets caught.
Yeah.
His barcode gets scanned and says, "We have a fugitive in the Costco."
Yeah. Well, and it gets scanned just as he's driving down the road as well. We see that their cops are at least as eager to shoot as ours are.
I mean, yeah, I was gonna make that assumption later on, but yeah, the critique on police officers, how quickly they are to mace Joe. He just doesn't even get a word in, and they're just turning around and macing him.
And then they're like, what? And he's like, ow! And they're like, spray him again. Like,
Told you to stop talking. Ow! Told you to stop talking.
yeah. But the thing is that when they give him the aptitude in prison to find his job, so we still have slave labor in prison, they give him the easiest IQ test we've ever seen, although it is framed as a trick question. You know, if you have 2 buckets and one carries 5 gallons and the other carries 2 gallons, how many buckets do you have? And then he's like, 2? And it's like, oh my god, you're the smartest person in the world, you know? They immediately bring him to the White House, and I'm thinking, today, if we could reliably, you know, let's say an IQ test was the way to figure out who was the smartest person, which I do not believe it is, and I would say most people who study this sort of thing do not put faith in the IQ test anymore. Or just faith in general intelligence like that anymore. But as soon as they find a guy that they believe to be the smartest person in the world is in a prison, they bring him to the White House and they go like, hey, help us. Our plants are dying. Our economy is failing. Our people are starving. We're buried in trash. What do? Help. Because even though they mock anybody who speaks intelligently, it seems that they still understand that intelligent people have a use.
And again, the complete opposite of what we've seen in the other side. It's like, no, I don't care what your intelligence says. I want to do XYZ, and I'm going to do XYZ. Well, that'll hurt people. I don't care.
Yeah, if you listen to the rhetoric coming out of, I mean, I'm going to be absolutely blunt with it. If you listen to the rhetoric coming out of the Republican Party right now, they will say you cannot trust the experts. Now, Joe does not claim to be an expert in anything, but these people assume that intelligence and expertise go together in some form. Okay? Mm-hmm. So this isn't a society of anti-intellectualism, except for they will mock you a little bit, and they're a little skeptical of his ideas when he's like, okay, I know that you put water on plants. Like, I'm not a botanist, but I know that water is what goes on plants. I don't know why the Brawndo is killing the plants, and scientifically he can't, tell them why. Like, electrolytes are compounds of salts, and salt in the topsoil has accumulated, and that's what's killed the plants. The movie tells us this. But he knows that you water plants with water. That's why it's called watering plants. Like, he's smart enough to put those things together.
Like from the toilet?
And that's the thing is that water is only found in toilet bowls anymore. Because Brawndo has taken over everything else. Or, Mountain Dew. Or, anything. You only drink other things. You don't drink water. I guess water just didn't have a good PR firm.
The movie does say water was getting in Brawndo's profits.
But the thing is that they sell bottled water. So I guess whatever company sold bottled water just didn't sell enough of it, you know?
Mm.
His only problem was that they just didn't give him enough time, you know?
Yeah, they wanted instant results, and that's not really possible. That's nothing happened like that. Also, as the movie goes on, we find out that half the country works for the Brawndo Corporation. And since Brawndo is the only basic drink, because again, there's no water, so meaning that people are showering with Brawndo, people are have the taps in with Brawndo, or washing their cars with Brawndo, etc., etc. If people are not using Brawndo in that regard and go back to using water, Brawndo stock tanks, and there's mass layoffs, now half the country's unemployed.
And the thing is we find out that a human is not even running Brawndo because we see the CEO of Brawndo and he comes in via, you know, Zoom call or whatever on the TV, and he's like, the computer freaked out and just started laying us off. Including theoretically him, because he says us. But the thing I will defend the movie on is that, one, apparently somebody still has respect for intelligence, at least in the abstract. Because with the exception of they want instant results, because so much in the society seems to come instantly.
Yeah, that's not too different than today.
And yeah, not too different. But he does tell them if you put water on your plants, after a while they will grow. So he does warn them that it will take time. Also, in the future, sex work is not looked down upon or criminalized. The only thing criminalizing is saying you're a sex worker and then not providing the service.
Yeah, that's where
Like if
Maya
you take
Rudolph.
the money, you know, Maya Rudolph is a sex worker. She's a prostitute in 2005. And then when she arrives 500 years in the future, she's like, oh, it turns out that sex work is just really easy here. And so she ends up making a lot of money when she first gets there.
Also, unlicensed sex work seems to be frowned upon.
Well, I mean, you need a business license for basically everything now, so I could understand that.
Yeah, she's let out on prison with a temporary prostitution license, as long as she is providing service to Joe. Which Joe is average intelligence. He's never caught on that this woman he's been hanging around with is not a painter, and the boyfriend is not her boyfriend.
Yeah.
Never figures that out.
Well, the thing is that she is supposed to be his equal. This is one of the few things I have a problem with the movie on, is, you know, one, the whole eugenics thing, it gets backwards. As well as just, I don't go in for eugenics, but also the who would choose not to have children, you know, if they could. The other thing is that Maya Rudolph is supposed to be average woman. And the thing is that she does seem at least as smart as him, and yet she's following his lead for the entire movie.
Yeah.
Like, at no point does she also offer, you know, they don't also give her an IQ test when she goes into the...
None that we see, anyway.
When she gets arrested, ? And says, oh, she's at least as smart as Joe. You know, because she should be on the same level as Joe. If that was what the tests were looking for, was perfectly average, then her and Joe should have the same test scores, basically. So they should be like, she's the smartest woman on the planet. Oh, you know. Let's make her Secretary of Education or something, you know?
The only woman on the cabinet seems to be a very flirtatious character, and it's Sarah Rue, uncredited in the role. And
yeah,
they put
the
her in
thing is,
very busty dress, and yeah, their character is just very flirtatious. And it's probably why, again, put your own thing there.
well, I'm going to say something though, is that they don't treat her any worse because she's a woman. That's the thing is, yes, this is kind of a misogynist culture, but it's not any more misogynistic culture than today is. You could say it's a little bit less misogynist because when she speaks, she's given the same opportunity as everybody else. When Maya Rudolph shows up, she's treated exactly the same as everybody else, and she's not looked down on because her profession is a sex worker. She's looked down on because she was committing fraud in their eyes. You know? It's like she was running a business that said she provided a service, and then she did not provide that service. So the only joke they ever really make at her expense once she gets there is, let's make sure she puts out.
Yeah, the other guys even say, they don't say the words, they say family style, but yeah,
Yeah. But like, the only thing is that they're like, oh, there's a sex worker here. Can we also pay her and get in on that? Like, you know, like that's it, you know, and Joe is even confused because he's like, you know, oh, you're calling her all these mean names. That may be how you talk about women here, but they're not calling her that. They're not calling her those things to be mean. They're calling her those things because that is literally her profession.
like I said, he hasn't put two and two together, and he never does in the movie.
Yeah, he never does in the movie figure out that she is a
And
prostitute.
she never tells him. She makes no effort to tell him, hey, I'm not a painter, I'm a prostitute.
But the way that they treat the attorney general, they never say anything about her clothes, and the only thing is I think at one point they call her like Sweet Tits or something, and that may actually be her name. Given how everybody else is named after like products and stuff,
Yeah, they got
they're
Frito.
just maybe they got Frito, they got Lexus, they got Mountain Dew, they got the Beef Supreme, they got, you know, there may just be like a product out there named Sweet Tits, and that is just her name. But the thing is that it's the only time they ever say anything about her. She doesn't seem offended by it. She just kind of nods and moves along, but they never say anything like, oh, her idea is stupid because she's a woman, or, oh, you know. And they never seem to, like, treat her more sexually than any other character. It's very weird that the way she's treated, because, like, yes, she's there and she's dressed sexually, but she's not treated any worse than any other character. She's just treated as, like, one of the members of the cabinet, which I've always found fascinating. as a thing. You'd think in like a worse society, like the point is that all of the men are constantly horny, but nobody ever lays a finger on her or makes a sexual joke around her, except for that one thing, and that may literally be her name.
Like I said, she's not credited in the movie, so I don't know.
Yeah, she never gets a credit in the movie, so that may actually have was meant to be her name, and we just didn't know it.
I don't know why Sarah Rue did not want to get credited in this movie. She just did not want to get credited in this movie.
I can think of quite a few reasons why she didn't want to get credited in this movie.
The busty dress, probably.
Well, and, you know, it's a weird movie about eugenics and stuff. I think the thing that bothers me more on the sexism front is that Maya Rudolph, who is, I mean, you know, take me to task on it, Maya Rudolph is a much better actor than Luke Wilson, is just treated as the love interest here, and she's supposed to be at least the same as him on all metrics, just woman.
Yeah.
The only difference between the two of them is she's supposed to be a little more outgoing.
They don't give the women actresses in this movie much to do. And that's sad, because again, you have Maya Rudolph, who is an amazing actress and is just the love interest. You have Sarah Rue, again, amazing actress, and she's given nothing. And they are the two main women characters in this movie. I don't know. I like you said, I want to give Mike Judge the benefit of the doubt, but it's one of the things that has not aged well with this movie. One of the many things that have not aged well with this movie. So yeah, Joe is about to get executed for making Brawndo stock tank for getting half the country unemployed with his toilet water plant idea. So Maya Rudolph's character Rita decides, hey, I'm going to pay off one of the camera people from this event. I'm going to take Frito, one of the other characters here, send him out to a field. We pass by a field. There's green growing buds here. The water's working, and if we show them proof that water makes plants grow, he will avoid death. There is a running joke in this movie. Okay, even before when this movie was being produced, the joke of a Starbucks in every corner already existed. So now Starbucks still exists in the future, but a latte means a hand job. So Starbucks is now a place, instead of getting coffee, you get sex. So next to the field is Starbucks, and since like said Kiki, all of the men in this future are horn dogs. They forget why they're there and say, well, we must be out here to have sex at Starbucks. Let's do that. And yeah, I kind of wonder how Starbucks felt about that, because that seems to be the only, I don't want to call it a negativity, but it's the only brand that has that happen. Like Carl's Jr. doesn't have it, Pepsi doesn't have it. All these other brands don't have that kind of stigma attached to them, but Starbucks does.
Supposedly, I mean, we gotta get back to the background here, because this movie bombed hard when it came out, because they did not screen the movie for critics, and they only, because this is a movie that Disney owns thanks to the Fox buyout. Fox saw the movie and was like, ugh. And they did not do screenings for critics, which is not the norm, and then they only put it in a very small release in a couple of major cities in a very few theaters.
That is very concerning, considering, again, this was the big follow-up to Office Space for Mike Judge.
Yeah, and Office Space had been a huge hit.
So you would think, hey, from the guy that made Office Space, here's his next movie. So you would think, oh, we're going to put this out into major theaters. It's going to have the same popularity, and it didn't. And
according to Mike Judge over the years, he heard a rumor that all of the corporations that they used found out, or at least Fox saw the end product and thought that the advertisers would have this reaction. The advertisers were like, oh shit, we let this guy use our brand name, and now Starbucks is a place for sex. Like, we're not a place where you can, like, take the kids to get a fruity drink while mom has a coffee. Like, no, that's not it anymore. It's, send dad over there for a hot latte. Costco wasn't just kind of like a boring brand where you go and buy everything in bulk. It was like, welcome to Costco. I love you.
it's like the world's largest Costco. It's a city in itself. That's how big this Costco is. So much so, like, half the Costco is in disarray because no one goes in those sections of the store. But yeah, I mean, if I'm any of these, say what's true about corporations. We've already said we don't stand corporations on this podcast. But if you're part of that corporation, that branding, this was representing your business. And this is how this movie is showing how he sees your business in 500 years. I don't know.
I mean, to me, that's kind of like the Taco Bell and Demolition Man, Like, Costco has defeated all other box stores. You see Walmart hanging around? No, you see Costco.
Hmm.
You see Target? No, you see Costco.
I don't think the corporations cared because they still got paid.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, if I were Costco, I'd be like, I would have had my greeters. Like, I don't know if Costco has greeters. We don't have a Costco around here. I don't think I've ever been in one, but I would have had, like, all my employees, like, start going, welcome to Costco. I love you. Like, I would have played into it because that shit was funny. It's the line from the movie most people remember. It is funny that the thing from this movie that dominates the most, Crocs.
Yeah, Crocs. This movie made Crocs popular.
Well, it didn't, because people don't remember that Crocs are from this movie except as, like, a weird niche bit of trivia.
Like, Crocs weren't really a thing. I mean, they were a thing, but they weren't as wide as they are now. Mike just literally looked for the most ridiculous looking footwear he could found Crocs, and put them in the movie because he thought they looked so stupid. And now Crocs in modern era is like the top selling slipper shoe, sandals, what have you.
I have never owned a pair of Crocs, and in fact, I've only ever seen one pair of Crocs that I actually want.
Yeah, but like all the brand, like they have Marvel Crocs, so it's like that.
I know. The only pair of Crocs I want is that Disney does sell a pair of Haunted Mansion branded Crocs, and they actually sort of look good, but I still, every time I see them, they make me think of, you were, you're the same age as me, but I don't know if you knew any girls or like your mom or something wore them, but like they remind me of jelly shoes in the
Oh,
80s.
yeah.
And like you probably wouldn't have worn them at all, but like the way those things felt on your feet is what I imagine Crocs feel like. So when people tell me like, no, they're the most comfortable shoe ever, you've got to get 1,700 pairs of Crocs. You'll never wear another shoe again in your life. I'm like, no, they're made out of plastic, and the last time I had plastic shoes was jelly shoes. And those were like the worst feeling shoes ever. And they left blisters on your feet. So I can't, I don't know. They just made your feet sweaty and they left blisters on your feet. And I don't know. I was really glad when jelly shoes as a trend were done. And that's all I can think of from a sensory perspective when I think of Crocs. So that's why I've never owned a pair of Crocs, but that and their ugliest sin.
We haven't mentioned it yet, but I'll mention it now since I think we kind of wrapped up the main plot as much as we could. The plot of the time machine. Because he gets to the future. He thinks, well, it's the future, so time travel must have been invented yet. Does time machines exist? And Frito, he says, yeah, time machines exist. You can get it at Costco. And there's a big joke about it. Hey, I'm going to get the time machine. I'm going to go back in time. I'm going to get you some money and do blah, 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 blah. And the punchline of the joke is the time machine is a carnival ride.
It's an educational carnival ride, but of course, since all the people are stupid and they stopped reading books, it doesn't actually know the real history. It just kind of...
It very much reminds me, again, this was before Futurama was a thing, but very much what they did in the Futurama episode.
Yeah.
Where they get history wrong. Charlie Chaplin led the Nazis. Right mustache, wrong guy wearing it. And we were saved from Nazism by the Un.
Yeah, the Un. And of course, I love the dinosaurs in there for no reason.
This movie, okay, and then at the end, Joe becomes the president and tries to do the best that he can. Him and Rita, they have 3 kids, and they're considered the smartest children in the world. Meanwhile, Frito has 7 wives, 32 kids, and they're all idiots. The cycle continues. So the movie ends on the same joke it began on. This movie has a lot of issues. Coming back to this movie after not seeing it in over a decade made me cringe a lot. Made me angry a lot. Again, mostly because of how much of this stuff is now modern day. But also, in general, like the not just the slurs and the stuff, but it's weird how I can't really explain it, but them watching the movie just made me angry, and I don't know how to properly vocalize that.
Yeah, I'm not sure it made me angry as it made me like, everybody keeps saying like, it wasn't supposed to be a documentary, and I kind of keep looking at it and I'm like, but it's not though. Like I said at the start of the recording, I keep having the same argument with people, which is that the human race has not gotten any dumber. And honestly, I don't think the human race is going to get any dumber. The only difference is that we have cameras now, So when someone goes, "Hey, Bubba, want me to see if I can light this cow's farts on fire?" We've got a camera there to record it and put it up on YouTube.
And even before that, we had America's Funniest Home Videos.
Yeah, but the only difference is that in 1437, when someone was like, "Hey Angus, you want to see if I can light this sheep's farts on fire?" Nobody was there to record it, except maybe there was a passing bard that was like, "Lo, I was passing yonder field, and I did see Angus try to light sheep's wind on fire," you know? But, it would have had to have been really funny to, spin the parchment to write it down, you know?
Then he set himself on fire and we all laughed.
Yeah, I mean, at best, that becomes a no shit, I was really there pub story,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And that doesn't get passed down for, all these years. Unless it's turned into a really good drinking song. Maybe it lasts for 2 generations, maybe 3. Maybe if they set a fire big enough to burn down a few houses, then you get the Sheep's Wind pub or something. And it lasts a few more generations of why is it called the Sheep's Wind pub, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me tell you the time about the story old Angus burned down half the village with the, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Now you do something dumb like that and Bubba sets a cow's farts on fire and somebody in China is laughing at it in 15 minutes. Depending on how fast your upload speed is, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's just the breadth of how far the story of your dumbassery will travel these days. That's the only difference.
Mm-hmm.
The highs and lows of dumbassery is not any different. The breadth of how far that story will travel is the difference. So we're not any dumber. We've just gotten better technology on how to spread the story of the dumbassery.
Mm-hmm. I did forget about this one. There's a post-credit scene. A third hibernation pod opens, and it's Upgrade, which is Rita's pimp, and he is going to get his hoe back, as he says. And that is how the movie ends. Upgrade with 2 Ds.
Played by Scarface of the Ghetto Boys. Just, yeah.
So, Kiki, does Idiocracy have the magic?
I mean, you want to say yes because it inspired so many memes and because it's got a few good people in the cast and because Mike Judge has given so much to, I like King of the Hill. I like Beavis and Butthead to a certain extent. I like a lot of the people that worked in this movie,
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, watching it again, it gets less funny every time you watch it.
It gets less funny the more you see that, we've said it, but yeah, it's more of a reflection of real life than it was. It's more of a reflection of real life now than it was when it came out.
No, I don't think it is. That's not my reasoning. It might be your reasoning, and I respect that.
Mm.
It is not my reasoning for saying that it gets less funny every time I watch it. I just think it gets less funny because I see more of the flaws in it every time I watch it.
It hasn't aged well. A lot of the jokes haven't aged well. A lot of the dialogue hasn't aged well. Like you said, its use of IQ to gauge intelligence. Yeah, it has not aged well. Yeah, it's so. My thing is, I'm going to say no. Not that, and yeah, and those are my reasons. The movie has not aged well. Just coming back to this, I just don't feel what I used to feel watching this movie because a lot of it hasn't aged well. And yeah, it's just watching the
Here's the
movie.
thing is,
But
I think the actual reality is dumber than the satire.
and that's sad.
And that's sad, yeah.
If you're in the U.S. listening to this, go out and vote if you haven't already.
Yeah,
That's all I can.
tomorrow's your last chance as this episode drops, so
Go out
save
and
us!
go
Save
and
us!
go and do your civic duty.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's all we can say on Idiocracy. Let's move on to next week. Let's talk about a movie that actually will give us some joy. Next week we are getting back into the world of Pixar, Finding Dory. We did the original Finding Nemo a while back, and it's time to get into the sequel. The sequel that, when announced, people were kind of scratching their heads. The words I remember saying was the only person who wants this movie was Ellen DeGeneres.
Yeah.
And but we'll go back and we'll see how the sequel to Finding Nemo went. And yeah, so come back next week for Finding Dory. And we will talk to you all next time. Bye.
Bye.
Don't let the magic stop here. Join our conversations on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Rewatching the Magic. We are on the X formerly known as Twitter at Rewatch the Magic. And new episodes are available every week at rewatchingthemagic.podbean.com. Remember, the magic is for everyone. It only stops if you let it. Podcasts are fun.
But there's work to be done.
We encourage you to get involved. Here are some organizations we support.
The American Civil Liberties Union fights for the constitutional rights of all Americans. Find them at aclu.org.
The National Network of Abortion Funds helps people find access to safe abortion services. Their site is abortionfunds.org.
The Trevor Project provides a 24/7 crisis helpline for LGBTQ youth and education services for schools on LGBTQ issues. They can be found at thetrevorproject.org.
Or find a way to help in your area.